So this is with the other video. I'm going to go by Notre Dame's graduate school in downtown Chicago. Notre Dame is located in Indiana, South Bend,
In
Indiana.
500 feet, turn right onto North Fairbanks Court.
They're not in Illinois.
At the light, turn right onto North Fairbanks Court.
So you can have any graduate school. Harvard can have an extension in Chicago. They can open up a graduate school and a postgraduate school in Chicago.
In a quarter
If they
mile,
wanted
turn
to,
right onto East
so
South
could
Water Street.
Stanford. These are extensions of their graduate school, but they can. And why wouldn't you want to be like in Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, as extensions of your graduate school? It would only make sense to be in the three major cities. So again, Stanford can open up a program here. And then it's a way to be cost effective too, because they don't have to go out to California to go to Stanford's graduate school. They would do it here in Chicago. It would be a physical school. Notre Dame has a physical presence. And so you get to meet people in person in that. And they can do it as a hybrid, a day or 2 days a week, like at Harper Community College. I took an investment course. The guy who was teaching the course was a financial planner from Morgan Stanley. We became friends. He was on my Facebook for a long time. Good guy. And it was a hybrid course. So some days we went into the classroom. 1 to 2 days a week we went in the classroom. And then the other classroom days was online. So you can do it mix and match. Like you go into the classroom 2 days a week and 1 day online. And then the next week you go 2 days online, 1 day in the classroom. So, it can be flexible that way. But you get to build up relationships. The hybrid's the better way. These pure online schools,
Turn right onto East South Water Street.
I don't like, because you don't get to meet people in person and form these personal relationships. I like the hybrid approach better. Like the University of Chicago can open up an extension in Los Angeles and an extension in New York of their graduate school booth.
Keep right to stay on East South Water Street, then turn left onto North Michigan Avenue.
So as they come here, we can go there. But again, I think it's a good idea. And it's more cost effective for people that don't want to travel and want to stay fully employed. They don't want to leave their job to go to grad school. Like my friend Jay.
At the light, turn left onto North Michigan Avenue.
My friend Jay, he went to night school at the University of Chicago. He worked full-time during the day at Prudential managing a bond fund. He wasn't the head manager. He was on the management team managing a bond fund for Prudential as he got his MBA at the University of Chicago going to night school. So he went part-time to night school. And he got his CFA as well.
Continue on North Michigan Avenue for half a mile.
These people, I don't know where they learn how to drive, but you're supposed to turn into the first lane, not the third lane. I'm turning into the first lane. So these kids don't know how to drive. When you make a right-hand turn, you turn into the right-hand lane. When you make a left-hand turn, you turn into the far left lane. That way, the middle lane, neither of you are in. You don't come near each other. These punks almost ran into me on Christmas Eve because they don't know how to drive. And it's actually the law. When you're making a right-hand turn, you got to turn into the right-hand lane. When you make a left-hand turn, you got to turn into the far left-hand lane. And if you don't, and you hit somebody, you're at fault. So those kids were at fault. They went from the right-hand turn, instead of turning into the right-hand lane or the middle lane, they turned into the far left lane. I was making a left-hand turn. I'm legally allowed to turn into the left-hand lane. So they're purely guilty. They laugh about it. I don't laugh about it. I've had enough trauma in my life. I don't need more trauma, especially from young punks where medicine and everything's getting, better, and they can live to 150 or 200 years old. I don't need BS from these kids. I mean, they're moving into a whole new future that is incredibly blessed. They're going to live longer than any other individuals in the history of mankind. So I have zero tolerance, and we as a people should have zero tolerance to children that are derelicts. Truly. Those that are given the most have the greatest responsibility. Those kids are given the most, more than ever before in history. The greatest responsibility is placed on them. We have zero tolerance for them.
In 800 feet, turn right onto East Adams Street.
So, again, getting back to my point, and I told you the 150 years, that's wrong. It's going to be much longer.
At the light, turn right onto East Adams Street, then turn left onto South Wabash Avenue.
So I'm going down by the Mendoza School of Business for Notre Dame. They're not in the state of Illinois. They're from Indiana. They have a graduate school down here.
At the light, turn left onto South Wabash Avenue, then turn left after DePaul University.
And it's right next to DePaul University, which is a Christian school, which Notre Dame is a Christian school. They can even rent space from DePaul. Truly. Yeah, DePaul has its grad school, but it also can move into Indiana.
At the light, turn left onto East Jackson Boulevard, then your destination will be on the left.
Jarvis College of Digital Media. So, you don't understand. Chicago is a huge college town, undergraduate, graduate. And see, you have the banners here for DePaul. So you have the DePaul banner there in white. Lily Kim, Marco Chow, they're my friends. They teach at DePaul University. Marco runs the computer and technology. Lily, I forget exactly what she teaches at DePaul. So again, Notre Dame's down here right next to DePaul.
Your destination is on the left.
And so it's in this building here on the left. And I'll pull up right next to it. But my friend Victor, who worked with me at Platinum Wealth Solutions, oh, it's got a beautiful lobby too. And so this is where Notre Dame's graduate school is. And it looks beautiful in there. Let's take a little look closer. If you can see in there. But beautiful lobby. It has a tree in there and it looks very beautiful. And so, again, it's right here on Michigan and Jackson. And it's the Mendoza School. So, I don't know who Mendoza is, but Latino. And they're here. So, again, Chicago is a huge college town. And from undergraduate to graduate to PhD. So, we got to have zero tolerance with these kids, right? You're giving them access, and you take their life expectancy in their country, and the kids born here, as I showed in my publications and everything, they're 150 to 200 years. Well, that's a big difference in life expectancy, isn't it? So shouldn't you be tight on immigration and be very picky on who you give that extended life to? I would assume you would. You would have, incredible restrictive morals. So again, you can't give it to evil people. That's why I pulled up Charles Manson, that, living in the 80s plus. Now prisoners, Charles Manson almost lived to 90 years old. So now you're going to take care of prisoners who are going to live to 100, 110, 120, 150, 200 years. So how many years, when somebody goes to life in prison, and say eventually we will get there, say they'll live for 200 years, and they commit an offense when they're in their 20s or 30s, and you're going to keep them in prison for another 170 years. But does the prison system think about this longevity problem? That they got rid of the death penalty? And then you're going to put people in prison because the food is getting better, the health care is getting better, everything is getting better. So you're going to keep somebody in prison for 170 years, as an example, because you don't want the death penalty. Who's going to pay for that ticking time bomb? That El Chapo's in prison, and the prison is way better. The quality of the food, the environment, the air that he was receiving in Mexico. And so, if he lives to 90, 100 or so, but if things get better and better, what medical treatment are you going to give him? Truly. Does he allowed, if he has a heart attack or stroke, is he allowed to get surgery? Is he allowed to get open heart surgery? Is he allowed to get an organ transplant? They did the transgender, and this is why I was against it. If you're going to allow somebody to get transgender reassignment in prison, that's an organ. They're removing an organ and reconfiguring an organ, and then you're going to give them all the hormonal medication. Then why wouldn't you give somebody who has stroke or a heart attack, say a heart transplant if they need it? So you're creating, by doing this with the transgender, you're creating really big issues of how long and how much you're going to give to these people. So you got the blind sheik, who, as far as I know, is still alive in prison, and I forget how many people he killed. But how many decades and decades, and then eventually how many hundreds of years it's going to come to, are you willing to keep them alive and pay for everything. So these are questions you have to ask when you get rid of the death penalty. And that's why I kept on publishing Charles Manson. What was he, 86 or something like that? So how long are you going to keep them alive for? And what forms of treatment are you going to, as medicine gets available, all the cures for cancer and everything else that are coming online and that are here over the next 5 or 10 years, no one will die from cancer. Zero. It really is zero now. But the whole point is, what do you give them in prison? How about diabetes? What quality of care do you give them in prison? Do you give them dietary and so on? Because really, now you have a right when they're alive. What constitutes abuse? Not giving them the proper diabetic medication could constitute abuse. So again, because you took away the death penalty, that wouldn't be a discussion. They'd be dead. But you open up a whole new can of worms because you keep them alive. So you have to understand that when you do these things and make these decisions, that how long are you willing to keep them? And this eventually create prison overcrowding. As I try to wipe it out and get people to do it, but the people that go in and they're there for these extended terms because you're going back and now uncovering cold cases, and you have a 7-year-old, as they caught the 7-year-old ex-sheriff serial killer. He's serving life in prison, I think multiple lives in prison without the chance of parole. But he's perfectly healthy when he got in there at 70 plus. He's going to live easily to 90 to 100 years old or more. And in that time frame, medical evolution and revolution is going to happen fast and furious. And now that you can save them and keep them alive to 110, keep them alive to 120, keep them alive to 130. So you open these can of worms of how long you want to sustain these people for. But the liberals, they don't think about this. I do, and God does. So by default, you're going to go down in people in prison, and then it's going to go rising up because of life expectancy, and you have all these people having long terms in prison. And then you're going to say, oh, compassionate release. He's been in prison for 100 years. And they're going to be, in the future, people like, he's been locked up for 100 years. How can we keep him locked up? He's healthy, he'll live for another 50, and we can't keep him locked up for another 50 years. And that's what they're going to do, and they're going to cry like people are going to be protesting. It's inhumane. You can't keep them in prison for 150 years. How can you do that? So you don't understand the can of worms you're opening up. God is for life, but he is also for death. And eternal death. So you got to understand this. So you're asking questions and giving people, and then when they get out, say they serve their sentence and these people are going to be all the people you didn't think were going to get out because it's a 50-year sentence or a 60-year sentence. They're going to get out because the quality of care and everything has gone up. Prison ministries, low stress environments, so on and so forth. They get all this correctional, they get all this training, they get exercise rooms, they're required to get so much out in the light every day and everything else. Well, what do you do when all these people pour out of prison because they're going to outlive their sentence? And you never planned for that. They're like, there's no way. Well, yeah, there is. And it's becoming more and more common. People they thought would never be out again now are back on the street. They outlived their sentence because you're soft on sentencing. Because you don't change sentencing with life expectancy. So for all these crimes, they never changed the amount of years in jail based on life expectancy changes. So they're going to outstrip their sentence and they're going to pour out of the prisons. And you can't do anything about it. They served their time, right? So, since its only requirement is that you meet your time served. And once you meet your time served, whether you're reformed or not, right? Because reform isn't the point. Because when you give them a fixed amount of time, and once they're done, whether they're reformed or not, they get out. And this has been causing us massive amounts of problems. Unbelievable amounts of problems. Because you don't care about reforming them, you just let them out. It's supposed to be reform institutions. They have to prove they're reformed. The sentence is just a guideline. But if they never reform, they never get out. So the point is, all those people went back to their criminal activity once they got out. Because prison wasn't about reforming them. They served their sentence. That's what the Tulsa King, the TV show, shows. His 20-something years in prison or whatever. And now he's perfectly healthy in the show. And it looks like he's going to live a very long time. Doing new criminal activities. That's what the Tulsa King shows. So, it's a reality. He wasn't reformed. He went right back into it. He just did his time. Once his time was up, they had to release him. So that means it's nothing about corrections. It's nothing about reforming and rejuvenating. It's about a number. You got 10 years, and once you're done with your 10 years, you're released. Or you got 5 years. Once you're done with your 5 years, you're released. Well, that has not served us correct. Truly, it has not served us correct. And it has caused all kinds of problems. So, we have some serious freaking ticking time bombs. And these people are like, I'll never see that person. And you're like, hey, there's Joe. He did his time. He's not on probation or anything else. He served his time. So he's released. He's done. He did his number, right? And so he's fully released. He's not on monitoring or anything else. So he's out. He can do what he wants, go where he wants. It's all good. So what are you going to do with these kids? I mean, it's ridiculous. So you go against me, and you don't have any idea the problems you're creating. And that's why God laughs. You have no idea what you're doing. And you keep on going against. So, again, it's beautiful down here. This is the East Bank Club. And my friends used to love going and hanging out at the pool during the summertime. They have a pool on the roof. They have a beautiful roof deck on the East Bank Club. They could create a jogging path and everything else, since they built the building that was attached to it. And Susan used to live there, a friend of mine. And she lived there at 24. She could afford it. She was making over $200,000 a year. 24-year-old. She could live wherever she wants. Her salary's just gone up exponentially. I can't. And that's a bunch of BS. So, here's the East Bank Club. EBC. East Bank Club. It says it right under it, too. And they have a good restaurant. I've eaten here with my friend Dennis and my friend Bill. I've eaten there twice. Enjoyed the food. And they have tennis courts, which I was supposed to play tennis with Jen, and Rocky was supposed to set it up for me. And then I came in, and I'm like, yeah, because her brother C used to manage here. And I came in with Jen and that, and then she got peed at me. I'm like, yeah, my friend Raquel Sanchez set up some tennis courts for me, or a tennis court for me that play for 2 hours. Because I miss playing tennis, and Jen agreed she'd play tennis with me. And then, if we would have played tennis, Rocky screwed me. If we would have played tennis, she would have loosened up with the exercise, got all the endorphins, and then afterwards, but because we couldn't play tennis, she's like, why am I down here? I'm wasting my time. And then we went to Potbelly's, that was right down the block over here, and we sat down, and she was cold as ice and didn't want to talk to me. She was peed. Then I brought her down here on false pretenses that we were going to go play tennis at the East Bank Club. I was furious at Rocky. I never said anything to her, but she screwed me over. I never screwed her over. I stood up for her many times. They didn't want her behind the bar at Baja. I stood up and got her behind the bar. They wanted to fire her at Charlie's. I stood up for her and protected her and kept her job. I drove her home after work. I took care of her kid. Many things. All I asked was for some time on the tennis court. You think it'd be like a no-brainer. She said, yeah, I did it. Well, I'm like, no court for you? And then Jen's all ticked off at me like I lied. That it was a bait and switch. She likes playing tennis. She played tennis in high school. She was on the tennis team. She's good at tennis. We used to play together. And she was mad at me. And then we went out and she wouldn't say anything or talk to me at Potbelly's. Well, I ate half a sandwich, and she wouldn't have anything, and she was like cold as ice. And all I did was, I missed playing tennis, and I loved playing tennis with her. And we didn't get to do it. And to this day, I still remember Rocky stiffing me, not coming through for me. I remember who does me right and who does me wrong. And I never forget them. But that's good if you do me right. But if you've done me wrong, I'll never forget you, and I want you to burn upon my death. Make no mistake about that. So, it's a bunch of BS. So, what are you going to do with all these dirtbags that you're unearthing with all the advanced quantum detectives, quantum forensics, all these old cases and that, and you're pulling up all this, and they need to be punished. You can't let them go. You let them go, the shit you've done to me, you let them slide in any way, shape, or form, you're going to burn eternally. They must get the maximum punishment. So what are you going to do with all these people as you unearth all these crimes like this fucking piece of shit jaywalking all over the place? Yeah, garbage. He's above the law. That's what the black people do, right? The mayor, you think it'd be better. But, the whole burning down Detroit Devil's Night, rioting, destroying the cities, suing the cities here, suing that. I've never seen, I think they've sued more than anyone in all forms of class action lawsuit. I looked it up when I was looking up the stuff with the downturn in 2008 and 9. Not only did black people go bankrupt the most on their foreclosures the most, but they also sued all the banks the most because they said they weren't financially literate. Well, isn't that Karen Lewis's fault, who ran the City of Chicago Teachers Union, the black lady who was putting out underproducing students, primarily black students, because Walter Payton had all primarily white, exceptional students. So Karen Lewis, who ran the Teachers Union, was a black lady running the Teachers Union, put out garbage. And they were illiterate. Reading, writing, and everything else. My ex, Jen, went there to help them. My friend Matt, well, Matt's a friend through David, my former partner. He teaches at an all-black school. And he started a swim team, teaching black people how to swim. He's an Asian guy. My other Nancy, she worked in helping black schools. She's an Asian girl. But Karen Lewis, I hated her. Running it in the ground and all the gangbangers. She didn't do any anti-gang anything. She didn't try any reach-out programs. She didn't create any anti-violence programs in the school. Any diversion programs with the kids. She didn't do anything. Bobby Rush, $5 million that came down from the federal to the state, Quinn, given to Bobby Rush, disappeared. All this was for anti-violence. But it was supposed to allow them to learn better, to raise better and more productive citizens. And it would have brought up all the real estate in their community. Truly. It would have, the properties would have appreciated. The people there got better educations, better paying jobs. They would have, renovated their houses. They would have fixed their cars. They would have done all this positive stuff. And it all was on Karen Lewis's head. She was the head of the teachers union. So when she got brain cancer, I said, praise God. She was forced to step down. But who's the new head of the teachers union? Are they getting all this negativity out of the schools and the schools performing? I mean, truly. And you have this large black population that's underperforming, and it was black leadership. As he said, Thomas, that black economist. And it's the funny thing, it's for all races. White leadership sells out white leadership. Asian leadership sells out Asian leadership. I'll give you Foster Bank. He was running scams. He's a Korean running scams on Korean people. So it has nothing to do with race. It's just that you can get the vote because of the color of your skin or the ethnicity, because you're one of them. So they just naturally give it to you. I hate white trash. I don't vote for white people just because they're white. And I prefer Asian girls. But that's besides the point. I don't give it to just because you're my same skin color. I hold you to higher accountability since I've been a child. I hated all the white people that did things wrong. I hated them. I had to kick the crap out of a lot of white people. So I didn't tolerate it. You make my skin look like shit. Truly. I see these things like Waters in my small group. He did that thing in Chinatown, and yeah, it seemed, not appropriate. And my friends that were all Korean, they're not Chinese, but they saw it. And Asians see it. The Asian community sees it, and they're like, look at that. And look at Waters. And he's on, Fox. And they're like talking about it. It's like running wild in the Asian community what he did in Chinatown. And so I'm like, great. The first thing, when they pulled the video, I didn't see it. I didn't know about it. I'm like, great. Now, they have another negative thing against white people. I'm like, and they asked me, they wanted my opinion. And I'm like, yeah, it wasn't done correctly. Yeah, he shouldn't have done it that way. Yeah, it was wrong. And he did issue an apology in that, but they were all over that. See what the white guy did in Chinatown? And they're Korean. It went through Korean, Vietnamese, all of them, because that person is still Asian. Remember the guy on the United plane? They pulled him off, screaming and kicking and everything else. Well, China banned United from China for a while. It spread like wildfire through the Asian community here in the United States and around the world. And I said, yep, they did it wrong. You just up it. Somebody is going to give up a seat. But United didn't want to, so no one's good. Everybody wants to go. Well, then you turn around to the guy trying to get on and you give him the deal. You give that person the deal. It's not like he's leaving for an organ transplant. Truly. They weren't. So pulling him off, I would have just turned around and said, well, I'll give you 2 free tickets and free hotel and this, and we can't get anyone to give it up. So you turn to the person, you offer it to the people on the plane. If no one gives it up, then you offer it to the person waiting to get on the plane. And you play it between them. Now, do you want the offer? And they back and forth. But they're independent. The person's waiting outside. He doesn't know if anyone's going to take the offer on the plane. So they're totally remote. He might hear the offer and he's standing there, but it's offered to the person on the planes first, and if they don't take it, then it's offered to him. And he can reject it back to the plane, but if he rejects it, they might take it on the plane. So he doesn't know what's behind the door. So more than likely, if it's good enough, he'll take it and say, okay, that's fine. I won't go. I'll go on another flight. Or they could have said, hey, we'll take you up to Milwaukee, like they did to me on Spirit Airline in Florida. I couldn't get out that day, but they said, oh, we can drive you to the other airport that's a couple hours away. And they gave me a car, drove me to the other airport, and I got on the plane there. But you can take them up to Milwaukee. There's United flights up there. It might be all booked here. And it's only an hour and 45. Not even. It's an hour and something minutes. So they get in an Uber. You take them up to Milwaukee. And you reserve the ticket and everything. And they get on a flight to Milwaukee. There's Gary, Indiana, or Midway. You can take them from there and hop on a flight at Midway. That's why airlines work together. I was in Kansas City Airport and Braniff went out of business. Truly, I was on a connecting flight and we flew into Kansas City on Braniff Airline, and they're like, Braniff is now officially out of business. But don't worry, you're not stranded. Blank Carrier is going to honor, and they did. The other airline picked up the passengers. It's an opportunity to gain new passengers. So, and also I met Chris and Mr. King. They were there for Kevin King, but Chris and his father, that Chris went to my high school, and Mr. King, he's a good guy. We were friends. And I talked to Chris and his father while they were in the airport. and they were talking about something going on with Kevin, who was my classmate, his brother, and they were up there doing something. But anyways, they were there when Braniff Airline went out. I was on a connection for it, and they put me on another airline. That's how they got each other's back. So they honored the ticket on another airline. But I was on a connection flight when the airline went out of business. So, again, you have all this going on, and we need to, address these issues. Here, let's look at the truck. See that coming through my window? Look at that. Look at those beams of light. This is what they've been doing to me in Chicago. They've been getting this close, beaming me with these high beams. And then these people coming up to my car. I don't know. Does he have bubonic plague? Does he have, I don't know, some disease? Why is he coming up to my car? That's why the homeless aren't supposed to talk to anyone. Not supposed to be on the street soliciting because they can spread disease. That's why it's illegal to beg. But go to Indianet and you'll go grab the numbers from the World Health Organization and the CDC. How many people get diseases from dealing with beggars? It is unfreaking believable. It is unbelievable. They get unbelievable amount of diseases dealing with beggars. So how do they allow them on the street in the city of Chicago to spread disease? Because remember, tuberculosis can be spread with just talking. Oh yeah, tuberculosis can be spread with just talking. You don't need to sneeze. Talking, singing can spread tuberculosis. They're small particles, and if you're within them talking or singing, you can get tuberculosis, as my brother got tuberculosis of the bone. So, again, this is why I don't understand it. So it's like the guy at Subway, he's constantly talking as he's doing my food. Why are you talking? So I don't understand. I guess you don't understand how these things are spread. And I have to go in there and put up with it because the health department, the government, and that won't do the right thing. Truly, I worked in kitchens like at Domino's. I wasn't talking to anyone when I was making pizza. I was looking at the order sheet. I worked at Potbelly's. I worked at Panera. I'm looking at the order sheet. My mouth is shut. I'm looking at it and prepping the good, and I keep my mouth shut. So I don't get it. Breathe in, breathe out of your nose. But you don't have to talk. So I don't get it. You can have your mouth open and breathe in and breathe out. But again, you're not supposed to be talking. It says talking to spread TB. If you're not talking, you're not spreading. So why the hell are you talking and making my fucking food? So I don't get it. I don't go in that Starbucks because they threatened me multiple times. I don't go in this export because they threatened me multiple times. Everybody messing with my head here, everybody threatening me because they're pieces of garbage. And we're on Christmas Eve. I gotta go home. But It's a joke. They have no idea what they're doing, and they're making all these laws. And then they allow scumbags to pace me with their vehicles. Either you're going, or whatever. It's like here, just sitting there. That's stalking. But they don't understand this stuff, and I go into it and I'll drive by the subway since I'm going home now. But I don't understand this. Why are you talking and making my food? He might have one of this. What toppings? I want blank, blank, blank. But Subway, they should ask you that before they make it. But truly, at Potbelly's and that question before you make it, what toppings do you want on it? You tell them, and then it gets printed off, and then at the make line, they put all the toppings on. So if you do things right, like we used to do, it doesn't spread disease. And I work with very good people in the hospitality business. So I don't get it. Like making drinks in the well and that. I was focused on making the drinks, not talking to the waitresses. If I had any statements, those statements would only be if I had a question on an order. But I'm there working. You got to do side work. I don't sit there and fraternize with the cocktail waitress. You got side work to do. I got side work to do. I got stuff to do. You should have stuff to do. So, this is the Subway I go to. I'll show it. But he's constantly on the phone talking as he's making my sandwich. Not to me. Whoever he's talking to, I don't know. But, again, here's the Subway. But I don't get it. You know, there's supposed to be the Chicago Restaurant Institute. They're supposed to be maintaining these standards, right? These for the culinary industry and that. So, unless you want to put everybody mask, and I don't have to if people brush their teeth and do the right thing. When you can talk, when you can't talk. But no one enforces any of this. And so they do things incorrectly, and they spread disease. So, I don't get it. So, I'm going up down DePaul, but this is down Sheffield. It's a beautiful street, you know. It's a great area to be in. So this is the corner coming up here. This is part of the DePaul community. On this side of the street, there's a Starbucks. And I'll go up to the right, and we'll show you. This is kind of like Oak Street. And this is Armitage. But this whole street has all these wonderful shops. This is Kincaid's right up here. Right there. And I'll stop in front of it. But this is where lots of people, like my coach Andy Pharisee used to hang out here. It has great wings, it does. And this is a great neighborhood. My friend Billy Apt used to live here with his wife when they first had their newborns. Before they had kids and just after they had kids. They love this neighborhood. All these stores are part of the DePaul community. Truly. There's Abercrombie Fitch and you name it. And the kids from DePaul, they can work in here. It's opposite of having a mall, but those students can have all kinds of jobs here, and DePaul can use their work-study programs to give them real-world experience. I did work-study in college at Benedictine College, so I didn't go source out a job, but the funny thing is I couldn't get work-study the second semester, which stunk. My fall semester I had work-study, and I used it all up. And the second semester, like, well, we have no more work-study for you. I had to stop, I was coaching these kids that were in high school, private high school, for kids from all over Latin America, from wealthy families all over Latin America. It was a boarding school, which they had the top floor in our dormitory, and some of them lived, the guys lived in the top floor in our dormitory, and the girls lived in the top floor in the girls' dormitory. It was a boarding school and a high school, and I used to do all their, athletics. But anyways, this is, high school kids can do internships here. Private high schools and public high schools should have work-study. The federal government should extend work-study down to elementary school and high school, not only college. And the businesses, the work-study program pays them to work in the business. So the businesses get free labor. And this is how they get experience, and the businesses don't have to pay them. The work-study program pays them for those in financial need. So that means the employer is more likely to hire them. I was a newspaper boy at 6 years old. So again, I think the work-study program should be in elementary school and in high school. But I'm right here by DePaul University. Here's DePaul. Right there, that sign says DePaul University. It's a little cold out, so I'm going to roll this up so I don't want to be sick for Christmas. It seems like everybody wants me to miss Christmas. So, anyways, let's go straight down a little bit longer. So again, there's all this down here, and I used to come down here for pizza, but Kingston Mines, I used to go in a lot to listen to the music, and they had, some cute girls used to go into Kingston Mines. It's right up here, and you'll see it in a second. Right there's a sign for Kingston Mines. And so I used to go in there, and that had good music. I'm going to turn around here and go back by DePaul, but this goes all the way down to Wrigleyville. And, I guess I can go up this way and go home down Addison. But the DePaul students can grow, and also the high school students, they can work, and the elementary school students can work as well. Now, there's certain jobs you can't have the smaller kids work in, but there are certain jobs they can work in. So I believe the government should extend work-study down it's eligible for both public and private schools. Work study is at private schools as well as public schools and college. So it's for private and public schools. And this way the government can pump labor into and take burden off of small businesses, truly, and allowing small businesses to get more labor at a lower cost so they can thrive and take care of issues and that. And the students, they get work-study credit. And so they get mentorship working in a business and know how to earn a buck. You know, so they grow up and they stay grounded. They're not spoiled. So they get to earn their own way and that, and they can save up and start a Christmas account, and you can teach them financial literacy, and they can start investing in elementary school. The first thing I did with my brother's kids, Emily, Alex, and Rich, and my brother poo-pooed this, but this is in my first breakdown in 2006. First of all, I came over with the Bible, and I was going to teach them Bible stuff, but my brother told me no, because I was babysitting for them. And he said no, and then I said, how about opening up investment accounts for them, and I'll teach them about the investment accounts and teach them financial literacy, right? Since I'm going to watch them, why not educate them? I want to educate them on the Bible. I want to educate them on money. Money in the Bible. And my brother, he didn't allow me to do either, which I don't know why. We never had that discussion. But this is back in 2006, looking out for my nieces and nephews. And I would have did the same with my sister's kids. And I did with my sister kid. 2 years I taught youth ministry at First Presbyterian. I was teaching youth ministry. So for 2 years to Jenna, and she, you know, her group of kids. And there was, you know, this wonderful young lady, and she used to help me. She's kind of like my assistant, but she was incredibly biblically literate. That girl read the Bible inside and out, and she was a young kid. I don't know how old Jenna was, but she was already incredibly visible. She read the whole Bible. She knew the characters. I mean, she was incredibly smart, but I mean, I couldn't believe on how biblically astute. So I made her my assistant. And yes, I adored her. Teacher's pet, I guess. But truly, she was awesome. I couldn't believe how unbelievably well she knew the Bible. And it was awesome. So she could help me, and I could point out things, and then she could explain them. Truly, sometimes she had to, you know, she helped me with, you know, explaining it to the younger kids in their kind of, you know, what trending words. She would reconfigure it. And, you know, the hip talk. Anyways, in the jive, or whatever you want to say it. But, anyways, it was awesome. I was so impressed by this little girl. I never met, she was like Jennifer Kim at a young age, but Jen grew up the same way. She was incredibly biblically astute. Jen, on the church and everything, she took notes. She took service incredibly serious. She took all her Bible studies. I did, but she did. She took them very serious. And in church, she was there writing down, making comments, meaning notes and about the service and so on. She grew up in the Bible, and she was incredibly biblically astute. Her whole life, her mother is an elder in the church. She grew up since birth in the church. And she is incredibly biblically astute. And that little girl reminded me, and this is when me and Jen were together, she reminded me like course, it's a huge. We have Aon and Gallagher and their insurance brokers, and the biggest in the country and two of the biggest in the world. Both Gallagher and Aon are two of the biggest brokerage firms in the world. They're up there. And so, again, you have all this going on, and the funny thing is, to make insurance, property casualty, and all that tends to be low margin. That's spun it off, and Allstate and all those firms never really made much money. And instead of focusing on expanding their property casualty business, they started diversifying out. Why? Because they needed to make margins from selling life insurance and other things that is not their, their specialty, because they couldn't make enough margins in their property casualty. But you can insure boats and autos and cars and ATVs, and now you have the shuttle program. That's property casualty. The shuttle has to have an insurance policy. All those satellites have to have insurance policies. That's property casualty. Insuring satellites, even in satellites in space, that's all property casualty. But instead of doing that and getting the lawmakers to correct the actions, the lights and everything else, and getting them to tighten up on drivers, raising the requirements and being stricter in that, so they can cut down on the amount of accidents and the severity and so on, so they can make it more profitable, so they can expand in their business model. They weren't working their business model. I ran Allstate, it would be a different company. I wouldn't be going into all these other things. I would be going into other things, but I'd be insuring satellites and deep sea mining and ships, truly oil tankers, and, the Navy, they need insurance on their ships, whether it's a battleship or, aircraft carrier, the planes. That's all property casualty stuff. Boeing, United, that's all property casualty. They have insurance on those planes. But is Allstate doing that? No, they're off trying to do other things. That's not really their forte. So there's so much they can do. This is all property casualty, insuring the gas station and everything. But instead of working and getting the legislators to reform things and putting in better systems so they can move down all this stuff with autos, which, if you do your research, they take in 100% of auto premiums and pay out 105%. The only reason they can pay out the 105, remember, 100% of auto insurance getting paid out, the premiums, and they take 5% extra on top of that, because all the extra related claims, it equals more than the premiums. Why? Because of homeowners insurance. They don't get a lot of fires in that. They get a lot less homeowners claims. Auto insurance is totally unprofitable. Unprofitable. To make them afloat is homeowners insurance. Whether it's condo insurance, renters insurance, and all that, they don't get a lot of claims. Very low. Steady premium, very few claims, and that keeps Allstate, State Farm, and all that afloat. But auto insurance, you don't understand. I did all the research. They pay out 105%. It's ridiculous on how unprofitable it is, because all these people drive like garbage. If I was running these property casualties from Geico to State Farm to all, I would be all over these legislators, and I would be telling my employees not to vote for them. Do you know how many, employees Allstate, State Farm, farmers, and that have in the Chicagoland area? And I'd be telling them, tell their relatives not to vote for them either. putting pressure and sending it into the aldermen and that to change the system. But you don't understand. That's why it's not a good investment. But if they can correct and get rid of the crappy drivers, then they can start making money from auto insurance. And that means they get to keep the profit that's already profitable on their homeowners insurance. And it's becoming more profitable up here in the Midwest. And if they do things right in Orleans, New Orleans, and in Florida and other places, then they can minimize the hurricane damage, and that can be profitable because it wipes them out. And what happens? It takes all the money from here, and premiums go up in the Midwest and everywhere else to pay for all the storm damage from them down south. Your rates get jacked up. The company has to do it, not because here, because they have to pay for all of that down there. And then the federal government has to pour money into Florida and taxes and everything else. And it's nuts because they don't take care of their stuff. They don't change the zoning and say you need Wonder Board. You can't use Green Board. You have to use Wonder Board. That means it can get filled, the house can get flooded with salt water, and it doesn't matter. None of it gets absorbed into the drywall. That's the point of Wonder Board. We use it in bathrooms all the time. Green Board sometimes, Wonder Board, but you can make Green Board even better. But those houses, because of the humidity and that, it has to be all Green Board and Wonder Board. And then the paints and that have to be sealants. Truly. So they have to have different forms of construction to deal with the environmental issues. And that means it makes things fair for everybody else because they're doing the right thing, and when they have the bad things hit, the damage is minimal, and they can handle it with their premiums, and they can handle it with their state money. So you might need a little bit of federal assistance, but you don't need billions and trillions of dollars. So again, they need to do things correctly, and insurance companies are supposed to watch this. I pointed out to my property casualty teacher when I was taking property casualty for my CFP. But I read many property casualty books and research, and it's unbelievable. But again, that they don't do the right things. And so I don't know why they allowed the tailgaters and everything else. It boggles my mind over the last 10 years. I get the hit and run. I get the tailgating. I get the people hitting me on the highway. I mean, it's just constant. And it's such an unprofitable business. That's why, again, if it was profitable, then they wouldn't need to use used parts. You would get new parts. So auto manufacturers, when you get dents, they would give you an OEM brand new. So they would give you a new part instead of forcing you into a used part. Because they got to save money because they don't make money. So you think, they drill down and their reimbursements and what they do, and it's just screwed because of all the negative claims. So these people don't understand it, and then the reimbursements to the body shops and everything suck. So it's not good. So I don't understand the city of Chicago and what it's doing. These are major corporations that are here that have to stay firm is from here. Bloomington, Illinois. All Allstate is from here. And we have many others, Gallagher and Aon, that do the brokerage, and they don't have a good base, the city of Chicago, where people do the things right, and they have minimal claims here that allows them to take more risks. They can expand into Puerto Rico, they can expand into the Caribbean and other places that get hit with more substantial hurricanes. They can expand into Cuba. So if things get better here, it allows them to take risk in other places. But if we don't clean up things here, Asian girl jogging. Nice. And it's actually good for them, truly. And well, I would pull up the stuff, but it's good because they have softer bones. The impact is actually good for them. The pounding, because remember, I think it's 4 pounds of pressure. So when you jog, compared to walking, there's more pressure. She was jogging, and so it stimulates the bones better. Now you have to worry about cartilage damage, but again, if you're doing it correctly, it's putting a certain amount of pressure back up through the frame, and it's very important for Asians who tend to have more softer bones than whites and blacks and Hispanics, I think. Yeah, they have the softest bones of the three. And so that helps them with stimulation. So another cop rolling. But my own neighborhood, I'm driving by. And so, and this is the McDonald's. I actually went here as a kid a bunch. I'm a big McDonald's fan, or was a big McDonald's fan. Things have went wrong for me lately, and so where they had me as a very positive customer, I'm not so positive anymore. And talking about getting back to kids working in high school and that, my friend Ross worked at McDonald's in high school. My brother Carl worked at McDonald's in high school. And they took their job seriously. They took their job seriously. And Ross, he can be a funny guy, but he worked at McDonald's and he didn't mess around. And he took his job seriously and did a good job. Carl did a good job. So, look at Fast Time at Ridgemont High. The kids working in the food court. I worked with all those kids that were working at Northbrook Court. We used to have so many high school kids working at Northbrook Court. But the thing is, it's not like before. I mean, not like today. It seems like we took our job seriously. I was a sophomore in high school working at Sbarro's, and I had to make the dough from scratch. I had to make the meatballs from scratch, the calzones from scratch, the pizza sauce from scratch. I cooked all the pastas, chopped all the salads. Basically most things were from scratch. We had the raw ingredients and then we combined it. So I learned how to use a Hobart mixer and all that. I learned how to knead dough and tuck dough. I learned how long the dough needed to be in the fridge. Truly, in our refrigerator before we could use it, bring it out, and then how long we had to sit it out at room temperature to warm the dough out to activate the yeast somewhat. But anyways, you put it in cooling to deactivate the yeast. So the yeast isn't over. If the yeast is over, you get bubbles in it. Truly, if it sits out too long, you'll get these air pockets. The yeast will create. Also, that means you didn't turn the yeast into a powder and it wasn't properly spaced. You got too much yeast. And all those little bubbles on the pizza dough, that means they didn't mix the yeast in properly. And guys didn't make the dough correctly, but I made the dough correctly. There's a big difference. So, again, understanding these things, I understood as a child. I spent all my time in the kitchen as a child. I made all my food. I made my cream of wheat. I made my oatmeal. Yeah, I love cream of wheat, actually. I did love cream of wheat. And I did it with butter in that. I made all my breakfasts, all my sandwiches. And I would read all the labels on all the cans and everything. I got time. I'm cooking it. I'm waiting. I'm stirring it. And why not read the information on how the different Campbell soups and everything? So I would read all that, and then I mix, and I spent a lot of time cooking as a child. But also, I had to take apart my bicycle and clean it, and it's just immense. And you get these kids, they don't have any responsibility. They can't even clean up their toys. There were no toys laying around their house. I wish my mother was here. There wasn't a single toy laying around the house. I put together my racing track. I put together the train track. I take it all apart, box it up. There was nothing laying around. She didn't have to pick up anything from us. I don't know, and I'm talking about me, and none of our toys were laying around. So we had very little, but again, everything was picked up and everything else, making it as easy as possible on my mother. So my sister had a different experience. With me, I did everything. So she just throw it on me, and I do all the chores and everything, pick up. Her kids would leave everything for her, overburdening their mother. And I told her, I don't understand this. Why are you letting them get away with this? So what happens? Your oldest son, little Larry, I go into his place, and it's filthy. When he's living, he didn't clean, because he didn't clean at home. He didn't do any chores at home. And so what happened when he went to college? She would come there and visit, and she'd spend the time cleaning his house, scrubbing his floors, everything. Same thing with her daughter Lisa and all that. They would go there because none of the kids cleaned anything or did anything at home. Truly did no chores. It's not slave labor. They need to take out the trash. They need to clean the floors. They need to clean the dishes. It's part of being a family. And I told my sister, I don't understand why you're allowing it and why you're overburdening yourself. And then you could have went to school. The kids doing their chores and that, she would have had less chores to do around the house and that. She could have finished her GED. She could have went on to college. Instead, she let the kids run ragged all over her, not doing any of the chores. And this is after I moved. And they grow up, and I look at their stuff, and it's like they're dirty. Now they're changing. But the whole point is the kids need chores and they need responsibility. And I believe in kids. I used to work with my dad in the cab, and I thought it was an awesome thing. I'm learning all this stuff. And I kept my mouth shut and I just listened. And it was a great experience. I worked in taxi cab at 5 years old. And it was a great experience. What do you think they do on the farms? Kids, I talked to my friends at Benedictine College, like my friend Doug. His family owned the largest dairy farm in Kansas. He has 21 brothers and sisters. He was 18. His oldest brother was 50 years old. Oldest brother was 50. No twins. 21 separate births the mother had. But they owned the largest sure the dairy was taken care of properly. So, like Little House on the, not Little House on the Prairie, John Boy, I forget that show. I love that show too. But they, I think, worked on a farm. But Green Acres, they didn't have kids. But the point is, I talked to them. I'm like, yeah, as soon as you can start doing stuff, you go out and feed the chickens or whatever. And that's minor. You take the pail out, you toss around the feed. But as soon as you can do something, you contribute. And it's expected of you. Once you're able to walk and do something, you're responsible to contribute. Everybody pitches in. So they grew up that way, but the thing the thing I learned from them is bad things, like in the grain elevator getting buried, or the grain elevator because of the things blowing up and everything else. So I started thinking of all these ideas to correct all this farm equipment and that, and make farm safety a priority. And that started back at Benedictine in 1986, because they would tell me open and honestly about what goes on the farm and that. My one friend, he fell off the tractor. His father hit a pothole. Tractors need shocks. Truly, tractors need shocks. So he was on a tractor on the farm, like in Green Acres, and it hit a pothole. Well, tractors don't have shocks, they don't absorb, and so it went straight up into the seat, and it popped him out of his dad's lap. He went off in the air and fell on the ground, and the dad slammed on the brakes, and the tractor tire ran over the baby. Now, you want to talk about a blessing? And he's very religious. He survived because it was muddy ground, and he fell, but when the tractor tire ran over, the gap in the treads on those, he was in the gap in the tread, right in between the two treads. Nothing happened to him. His dad flew off the tractor, went down and grabbed him, and he cried a little bit, but he didn't get hurt from falling either, because he fell on soft mud. It was soft ground. So nothing happened to him. And as he tells me, lucky to be alive. I mean, what are the odds to fall right between the treads, right on soft mud? Now let me give you the other story. You can look and really believe it or not. A girl falls from more than 5,000 feet. I think it's a girl, or maybe a guy. I forget which. 5,000 feet. The parachute didn't open. You know what happened? And you see her falling, because they have from the fairgrounds, her plummeting, and all you can see is by the fairgrounds, and then she disappears. Then she landed on freshly laid sod. Freshly laid sod. The ground was wet, the dirt under it was wet, and then they put down brand new sod. And when she landed, or he landed fanned out, and it spread the impact. And the other thing, who owned the house? A freaking very good doctor. Truly, a doctor owned the house, who I guess was pretty good at his profession, from my understanding. And right away, the doctor heard it, ran outside, and administered life-saving treatment. Person lived. My friend Johnny Arpino fell down 7 stories in an elevator shaft in a construction, broke all his bones, fully recovered. He was shredded, his bones and body fully recovered. 100% recovered. I mean, he taught me about abs, and we were friends. He worked for a food company. Or no, I'm sorry, he was in construction. Sorry, that's another friend that worked for the food company. But fully recovered. Everything healed. But again, he had to go into the gym. He had to sweat through it, but he had serious determination, and he was shredded, and he was in incredible shape. And he told me, when I was doing the abs, the blowout, so you compress the diaphragm so the muscle tissue can squeeze against the floor, the pelvis floor, and so it can squeeze, straining the tissue, pushing it. And so he was talking about, we were talking about his abs and everything else, but fell down 7 stories down an elevator shaft. Lived perfectly recovered. Everything healed. Another friend of mine broke his neck, John Sr. Recovered. He went into bodybuilding and everything else. Another friend of mine, Todd, broke his back. Fully recovered. So, what's God expect of me? To fully recover. Anything less is desecration. And anybody responsible will be put to waste. So, again, I've been around Bill Bergstrom. He had the Roman chair. He had back issues. He broke his back, I think. He played football with me. I think Bill broke his back, and played football with me. Bill's a really good guy. And that's funny, I didn't see him at the reunion and that when I went to... But Bill's an awesome guy. I met with him and David about the Bank of Hope. But Bill, awesome person. And he grew up in a family that, in Deerfield that was economically challenged. And he grew up more righteous. He went to a Christian school. He went to Holy Cross in Deerfield before he went to Deerfield High School. But again, these things can be done. And so you say they can't, but they can. And so we have to figure out these things. And like I said, we need to raise better people. Because I want less prison and I want better people. And so one way to solve the problem is raising and developing and reforming people correctly so we can have better people, so we have less headaches on our hands. That's another way to solve the problem. So that's the mission of the church. Do you know that? The mission of the church is to create better people. That's the whole mission of the church, is to create better people. And that's why Christianity, Jesus came around to reform the church. So it wasn't going right. It wasn't. Read the Old Testament. Jewish people kept on over and over and over again. It makes me sick. And the whole point of the disciples, Christ and that, was trying to reform things to get people back on the right track. And I've been trying to reform things to get people back on the right track. So, again, we're at Christmas Eve, and I'm heading home, but we need to get people back on the right track, doing the right thing. I wish Spike Lee would live what he says and get down and into these communities and start having these people do the right thing. I mean, really get hands-on into these communities, working with these anti-violence activists in diversion programs within black communities. So why doesn't he live his movie? Do do the right thing and really get there and get down in it and do the right thing and start reforming things in the community and be a beacon for a brighter tomorrow. And the funny thing is, if that gets going, then every community benefits as it moves forward positively. The black community, the Asian community has been a great benefactor on the United States. I'm not saying all Asians, but the Asian community in general has been a very positive thing on the United States. They produced an incredible amount of things in the United States. So they, a couple thousand in prison out of, 20 million, 19 something. But they've been very much, all those Asian people are around, Jen's friends and that, they never broke the law, ever broke the law. Not taxes, not anything. And they were very diligent, like Han said, overachieving Koreans, overachieving Asians. But the whole point is, her group and all of her friends were very much, they're, by the book. They're very law-abiding individuals. And so they've been very beneficial. Think of that if we get, the black community and the Hispanic community and reforming the negatives in the white community. It can be incredibly beneficial to our society that we're finally operating on all cylinders, but we've been operating with so many hands behind our back. And you still have Sherlock Holmes and that, and you can do timepieces for detectives. So it's not that it doesn't go away, that you can do timepieces. Like Sherlock Holmes is back, but then they did the modern, which I liked. But you can go back to the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. So the storylines don't go away. And then you got all the space storylines coming on, and deep sea and everything else. So the storylines are expanding, stuff they didn't have before. So again, don't see it as losing. You're actually not. You're actually, so many are. And then more people go see it because they don't have the negativity in their life. It's hard for me to take the news. Truly, all the negativity really sits on me negatively. But again, I like people on the news, so I watch the news. Not so much I like what they're reporting on, because I don't, but I like the people, so I watch the news. But truly, the negativity, why does there have to be these issues every day? And for years I didn't watch the news, with Jen very rarely in that way, and it was more peaceful in that way. But again, we can do things better. Here's the Skokie Swift. This goes right out to, here. And there you have Old Orchard Mall out here. And, extending the Skokie Swift, would be a good idea. But this is a great mall, Old Orchard. It's an outdoor mall. And it's great. It's like Woodfield Mall, I think. Not Woodfield. Woodfield is primarily indoor mall. Northbrook Court is indoor. Oakbrook Mall is a big outdoor mall. It's a great outdoor mall. studies on how it affects the different vortexes, because the wind coming down, then it creates that little vortex. And so I wrote this while I was looking at a building on South Michigan Avenue, and I was thinking about the building coming in, but they don't look at the dynamics of how each structure affects the other structure, and how do they operate as a community of buildings, affecting the overall dynamics of the environment. From expansion, contraction, you do an all-glass building, right? Compared to a brick building, the brick absorbs the heat and then radiates the heat at night. That's the concrete jungle in New York, Hell's Kitchen, all those brick buildings, and then concrete. Now, concrete doesn't absorb as fast as brick. Brick absorbs heat faster. And so when the night comes, because the atmosphere cools down, the bricks release all its heat that is stored up. So that's called energy storage. Bricks are great for energy storage. And so it takes all that energy and releases it in the form of heat at night, and you get Hell's Kitchen. But the thing is, they don't study these things. And they don't understand how these affect the atmosphere. And you have to understand what type of material they're using. Brick, what type of brick? And you have to do studies on the brick of how it responds to hot and cold. Even the mortar, how the asphalt and all that, to figure out what type of environment you're creating. How much heat is it capturing? How much heat is it radiating? Truly, what types of shrubs are going in? How big are the roots? What are the directional of the roots so it doesn't crack the sidewalk or crack the street? That it strengthens the foundation. So you can't just put in trees, you have to do root studies. And you want to know how it is going to intertwine with the soil and make things better, creating a more stable environment. But they didn't do this. I've been writing in California. I've been doing all this stuff all over the place. There's a tree going up, cracking the curb. The trees right here destroying the curbs. Because they put them in and they don't understand what they're going to grow to. Truly, they start off and then they expand externally in width, and they go up in height, and then you don't understand how strong the branches are and everything else. And it's like, you're just like, oh, put that there, that legs there, we need some shrubs, throw in some shrubs here, throw in a few trees there. Well, it's all about the right stuff in the right place. So all this stuff has been thrown together, and there's been no study how it interrelates with each other. How much grass to how much brick, or how much wood to how much glass, and are you using single pane, double pane, triple pane? There's triple pane windows now. And then what types of gas in between the panes? Is it, nitrogen or whatever? So this is all part of the zoning requirement in that, and you're figuring out what type of community you're creating, what type of environment you're creating. But you can't just throw stuff up next to each other and then hope for the best. It's like the mall. Where are you putting the shops? And we'll go in here, but strategically, this is a maze. You're creating a maze, and the maze is of shops. So, what type of shoppers interact at Macy's? Truly. And the shoppers that go to Macy's, do they like Uncle Julio's? Do they, do they like Banana Republic? Do they, you're figuring out how you're moving traffic through the mall. So the point is, you don't want the shops too far. Roca, this restaurant over here, It was good. I went there with Lair, and he took us out to eat. Westfield Mall, Old Orchard. But you're setting these shops up, and there's North Face, great winter gear. But global warming, what are they going to do? North Face has got to figure, okay, well, then I need to, not emphasize the winter as much, and I need to get into other lines for spring and fall and more, mild temperatures. So anyways, Pottery Barn and the Put Stack, or I should say Shack, but Noodle and Company and so on. But here's LL Bean, Crate and Barrel. So you're creating this maze of stores, and you're trying to move people through. You want them to travel through the whole mall, but you don't want to make them jump from one place to another. Yes, there's no CVS or Walgreens in the mall, which people could pick up their pharmacies inside the mall, right? At CVS or, Walgreens inside the mall. But you're trying to make them move through the small in small bites. So it's like giving them breathers. They walk from Macy's over to this store. They go in and browse for a little bit. Then they walk from that store. And slowly but surely, how you stagger and integrate the stores, the different populations that go, they move throughout the mall. That makes it lucrative for all merchants that they see the different stores, and eventually they buy something that's out of their natural preference because they walk by the Banana Republic, going from this store to this store, and they're like, oh wow, that's a nice shirt. Eventually you'll hit on something, or that's a good deal and I need this. There's the Barnes & Noble. It's good they're coming back to bookstores. So again, understanding this, you have to figure out how you get the clientele to move through the mall, but you have to understand their preferences. Economics teaches you preference curves. Higher preference curves, lower preference curves. And my most preference is I need a girlfriend. And it's been that way for the last 20 plus years. When I got Jen, I never wanted to lose her. And I worked very hard on trying to make everything perfect. Because I didn't want to be single again. And I wanted to move deeply into this relationship, as the Bible says, two becoming one. And I am single not by want, by regret, forced to be. But again, I'm going to head home. But the mall, you have to understand you're trying to move it, but you need to understand the demographics. That's where you get into the U.S. Census. But you got to figure out how much of the people that are local using the mall compared to people. My sister came down to Old Orchard because she likes it. She could have went up to Vernon Hills, and she did at times, but she liked Old Orchard because it had certain things she wanted that was different than Vernon Hills, that was different than Northbrook Court. So remember, in one way you're competing, but in another way you don't want the same things. So you're not trying to create a duplicate model, because then you don't get people going sometimes in Vernon Hills, then sometimes in Northbrook Court, then sometimes to Old Orchard. So you're trying to create variety that'll capture people from outside the market. So you have your inside the market demographics, and inside the market you want to capture the majority of the internal market. That's your everyday client. And then you want to capture from the surrounding markets. You want people to come up from Oak Brook, to come up to Old Orchard, because you have something cities and that, and then you bring people in and you don't understand them, their background, how they're raised, what they speak, what their habits are, and so on, and then you just dump them into this country without understanding anything about their habits, about their demographics and drive habits, and you dump them in, and then you think it's going to work. No, you just create a nightmare. And that's what our government's been doing. One nightmare after another nightmare after another nightmare. And this happens all around the world. And there should be a seminar on this at the United Nations. How they can, how we can start making a better world. Because this causes misplacement, and then the people grow up with resent and anger and hate. So I think of, Siberia in Russia and other communities. So yeah, I'm a big Illinois homer because I live here, but also I think about all the communities around the world and how they can make things better in Siberia, and how it can offer, and how those communities can thrive and not die. And one way is high-speed train, like my friends moving out to Indiana and Gurnee because they can get into the city via high-speed rail. That's what happens in Japan as well. People, as long as the rail's right and it can bring people into the city, then they live further out from the city. And so we got to get high-speed rail, allowing people to move away from the urban center, but get the urban center whenever they want. So they don't feel trapped on the farm in that. That's what they had a big problem with Korea. That the farmers were mainly males, truly. And they had all this farmland, but the city girls didn't want to go out. Remember Green Acres? She didn't want to be on the farm. She wanted to be in the city life and that. Well, if you create high-speed rail and they can live in the farm but can go into the city and, have the city life too, and you can have, your cake and eat it too, then the farmers wouldn't have to keep on reaching out to outside the country to bring in girls from other countries into Korea. Because the city girls, they didn't want to grow up on the farm. They wanted the city life. So you have to figure out how they create these balances of give and take so you don't get this disharmony. And the disharmony causes people to have, all this negativity. Like going into Starbucks, they have the kid with the red hair and the kid with the earrings and the gay kid and so on. I mean, I don't know. Anyways, and it creates a lot of disharmony because the gay population is about 2.5% of the United States. It truly is. It's a small fraction. And why am I running into all these alternative people when they make up very little of the United States? Like they used to, if they go hang out in Boys Town in Chicago, and we didn't have any gay people at Dave & Buster's. I never ran into a single gay client at Dave & Buster's. They didn't come into Dave & Buster's. Truly, we didn't have a single gay person on staff. And at Baja, we had 1, Spike, 2, and I counted Diane, Spike, and then what's the name was So, but the point is, they weren't accepting of, the churches. None of them, the Korean church, don't like the LGBTQ. And rightfully so. I agreed. I went there because it was a safe haven, too. Truly. I went there because of their stance against, and I could go to the Korean church and I didn't have to worry. It's like my friend Sam. I went to his thing, to the Muslim hairdresser, the haircut guy. Before him, I was another guy who was Muslim. I was good friends with. He used to play basketball. I forget his name. He opened up his own salon. But the thing is, and I told him, I went here because of your stance against the LGBTQ. So when I'm dealing with a guy, I know we can be friends, but that's all I have to worry about from you. We can be just good friends, and that's it. So I don't have to worry about anything more, so I come here. And that was during my first breakdown. Me and Sam became great friends. I went to Adam first, and then Sam second. Adam is the younger brother. Sam's the older brother. And I was with the other guy before, but I went there because of their stance against the LGBTQ. And so I went to all these places where I could find my safe zones. And now it doesn't seem like I can find my safe spots anywhere. And truly, I go to my gym, like at Belly's, I avoid when those guys, there's a couple, and when they came in, I left. But my martial arts, there wasn't any. Zero in my martial arts. At Belly's and that. Zero amongst my friends. Zero. So I had all these safe spaces. So, and my girl, she didn't have any LGBTQ friends. You could say one, but we didn't hang around her that much. We see her in passing in that. It was a more distant relationship. And I didn't know. I thought she was straight. Only later did I ever find out after we separated, and that's because she told me. But again, I always thought she was straight. So I thought it was zero around Jen, because no one else, guy, girl, no, there was zero LGBTQ. My nieces and nephews, they didn't bring over any LGBTQ. So none of their friends were LGBTQ. And so again, I used to do this, and then I just put myself in safe places, making sure that I'm not dealing with somebody that I don't want to deal with. And I go to Vic. He does a lot of girls, but his brother Paul's better with guys, and both married. But Vic's a little sensitive, but still, but his sensitivity makes him very good with the girls. So if anyone ever knew Vic and Paul, my brother and sister do, but Teddy Kosov, good hair place. My friend Tracy married his son, Teddy's son. They wanted to open up a 7-star resort in Chicago, a 7-star hotel in Chicago. might say spaces. And so I didn't have to feel awkward. And one of them was the movie theater. I used to go to a lot of movies in my first breakdown too. I did go to a lot of movies. And then I found friends like Michael, and Costa loves movies, and Michael loves movies. And so we ended up going to a lot of movies. And then who's his brother Jimmy and David, they love movies. And then Susan and Sabrina, they love movies. And so we expanded to this big group. Costa, Michael, Jimmy, David, Sabrina, Susan, and we go to movies together. As well. The city seems to have these revitalization programs going on. How's the suburbs doing their revitalization? Like, what is Buffalo Grove, where I live, doing to revitalize Buffalo Grove? Reimagining Buffalo Grove. How are they bringing it into the future? So, we got the Christmas lights here, which I haven't gone seen. Which I do want to go see. Hopefully they keep them up to New Year's Day. But again, I wonder how they're reimagining the suburbs. Like, I'm looking at this industrial park that, is supposed to be this logistical center. And I'm waiting for, how they're going to do this logistical center that used to be the Allstate. But it's all about, how they're reimagining this community and moving it into the future. Now, those logistical parts, they can change, and they can turn them into data centers. And I'll show you where that is, up on Saunders, but they don't have to be logistical, meaning they don't have to warehouse logistical stuff. A data center is a logistical center for information. Still a logistical center, but logistical center for information. So they can turn it into a, high-end tech park. Truly. They can reinvent it from a logistics center to moving packages to a high-end tech park with data center and all kinds of stuff. So if they want it, they can, start putting semiconductor stuff up here. They could reimagine it to something else. So again, they have, all the right stuff. So it doesn't have to be moving parcels. It could be used for something else. It could be, an information center, data centers and research centers and everything else. So these are box structures, and they can make them into whatever, build out the interior to whatever they need. So again, they can move it into something else than a logistics center for packages. So I don't know what they're going to do with this, with solar panels and many other things, you can convert, well, not fuels, but biopetroleums. But again, and I do believe we need wind and energy, and we need our nuclear. And then we have our biofuels. So, where is this going? You know? So, if we get rid of all the combustion engines, right? So, I don't understand. I put out proposals to make the combustion engines better. Not everything needs to go battery. And yes, you can create a fuel, like, how you swap out a battery? How about swapping out, like the thing, how about swapping out a container of fuel? You have the fuel that's gelled, and it's in a container, it's gelled, so it's not explosive, it doesn't release vapors or anything, and then you snap it in like those snap-on tools, where you snap in the battery, and then you take out the old battery and you put in a new battery. Well, how about biofuel that's gelled, and you have a converter, and you snap it in, and it converts it, it liquefies it, and turns it into vapor, and goes through a combustion engine. So you can make them like battery packs, but now they're fuel packs. Truly, fuel packs. You just take out one fuel pack, snap in another. Even with the car, you don't even need to fuel up. You don't need to fuel up at the pump. You come in and you just snap in a fuel pack. You take a fuel pack out, you snap a fuel pack in. So you pull up to the gas station and it removes one pack, puts another pack in. I mean, the tank, the cars are different, but it puts in the pack. And so you just buy these fuel packs, sticks them in, sticks them out. So it'd have to be standardized in some things. But again,